It happened on an ordinary afternoon inside a small-town diner where a rich bully thought his money made him untouchable. When a quiet man stepped in to protect a waitress from humiliation, the bully didn't back down. Instead, he did something unthinkable. He called the police and demanded the man be handcuffed, claiming he was dangerous. Within minutes, officers surrounded the diner and arrested the wrong person. The bully smirked, believing he had won. But what he didn't know was chilling. The man he tried to destroy wasn't just any stranger. He was a highly trained Navy SEAL, and the moment the truth came out, everything in that diner changed. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The afternoon sun spilled through the wide diner windows, painting warm stripes across the black and white tiled floor. It was the kind of small-town place where the smell of fresh coffee mixed with the sound of quiet conversations and clinking silverware. Nothing extraordinary ever happened here, at least not until that day. At the center of it all was Lily, a young waitress who moved between tables with a polite smile she had perfected to hide exhaustion. Business was steady, and her hands were full. But she handled it with practiced grace. At the corner booth sat a group of loud young men dressed in spotless designer clothes, laughing far too loudly at their own jokes. Their leader, a tall blond man with expensive sunglasses pushed lazily onto his forehead, was the kind of person who believed money gave him permission to treat people however he wished. His name was Derek Harlow. Locals avoided him. Outsiders tolerated him. Lily simply endured him. Across the room, a man in military camouflage quietly ate his meal, barely drawing attention. He didn't laugh, didn't stare, didn't interrupt anyone's peace. His posture was straight, disciplined, almost unnoticeably sharp. Only the German shepherd sitting calmly beside his chair hinted that he wasn't an ordinary customer. The dog's eyes followed everything with silent intelligence, picking up subtle shifts in the room like invisible signals. Lily approached the loud table, hoping the group would keep things simple. Instead, Derek leaned back and smirked, tapping his glass in the air. "We've been waiting forever," he complained loudly, though Lily had been at their table only minutes before. His friend snickered. The comment drew several glances from nearby customers, but Derek wasn't finished embarrassing her. He enjoyed the attention far too much. Across the diner, the quiet man with the German shepherd lifted his gaze. His eyes didn't show annoyance or anger, just awareness. A calm, steady awareness. He watched Lily brace herself for Derek's next insult. Her shoulders tightening ever so slightly, something in the air shifted. The peaceful diner atmosphere began to crack, and though no one knew it yet, everything that followed would spiral from this single moment. Lily swallowed hard as she steadied the notepad in her trembling hand. She had dealt with rude customers before, but Derek possessed a different kind of cruelty, one wrapped in entitlement, sharpened by wealth and fueled by the desire to embarrass anyone he believed beneath him. He tapped the edge of his glass again, louder this time, as if calling a dog rather than a human being. "Come on, sweetheart," Derek drawled, leaning forward with a grin that felt more like a warning. "You're slow today. Maybe this job is too much for you." His friends burst into laughter, their voices echoing through the diner as Lily's cheeks reddened. She opened her mouth to respond politely, but Derek cut her off, flicking a crumpled napkin toward her tray. It bounced off the edge and fell to the floor. His friends whooped like they were at some cruel show. Lily bent to pick it up, hoping the moment would end there, but Derek wasn't done. "While you're down there, sweetheart," he said loudly, "maybe clean my shoes. They're worth more than your whole paycheck." The diner fell into an uncomfortable silence. Several customers shifted in their seats, but no one dared intervene. Derek's family was wealthy, influential, and known for making problems disappear, especially the kind involving complaints against their son. At the far table, the man in military uniform slowly set down his fork. His German shepherd lifted its head, ears pricking. Eyes fixed on Lily, the man watched Derek's smirk grow wider. Watched Lily's hands shake as she stood up again, forcing a small smile she didn't feel. "Sir," she said softly. Please don't talk to me like that. Derek laughed, stepping even closer, ignoring every boundary. Or what, you gonna cry? Before anyone else could react, the military man rose from his seat. He moved with quiet purpose, no wasted motion, no hesitation. His dog stood beside him. Alert but controlled, the diner held its breath as he approached the scene, calm, steady, unafraid. He wasn't looking for a fight. He was stepping in because someone needed help, and that was the moment Derek made the mistake of underestimating him. The stranger stopped a few feet from Derek, his calm presence instantly shifting the atmosphere inside the diner. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't get aggressive. He simply placed himself between Lily and the bully, standing like a silent barrier she hadn't known she needed. That's enough, the man said quietly, his tone controlled yet unshakable. Step back. She's just doing her job. Derek blinked, stunned for a moment. No one ever spoke to him like that. Who do you think you are? He scoffed, looking the stranger up and down. Some kind of hero? The stranger didn't flinch. His German shepherd stood at attention beside him, muscles tense but obediently still. The dog's gaze locked onto Derek with a silent warning. Derek's friends exchanged uneasy glances, but the bully pushed forward, jabbing a finger toward the stranger's chest. This is none of your business. Go sit down before you regret it. The man didn't move. It became my business the moment you started treating her like garbage. A ripple of murmurs swept through the diner. For once, the spectators weren't laughing. They were watching Derek get challenged in a way he had never experienced before. Lily stood behind the stranger, her heart pounding, unsure whether to intervene or let him continue protecting her. Back off, Derek said, voice cracking with rage. But when he reached out to shove him, the stranger caught his wrist mid-air. Not hard, not aggressively. Just firmly enough that Derek couldn't move. Gasps filled the diner. Derek attempted to jerk his hand free, but the stranger released him before he lost his balance. Stepping back with deliberate restraint, humiliation washed over Derek like a wave. His face flushed red, his pride cut deeper than any wound. He wasn't used to being stopped, especially not so effortlessly. You're gonna pay for that, Derek spat, stumbling backward. He grabbed his phone with shaking hands and walked toward the door. I know people. I'll make one call and you'll be in cuffs before you can blink. The stranger didn't respond. He simply returned to his table, calm as ever, unaware that Derek's phone call would unleash a storm far bigger than anyone expected. 15 minutes passed in uneasy silence. Derek had stormed outside, pacing furiously by his sleek sports car while speaking into his phone, his voice rising and falling like someone demanding a personal favor. Inside, the diner slowly returned to a fragile calm. Customers whispered among themselves, glancing between the stranger and Lily, unsure of what would happen next. Lily approached the military man cautiously. Thank you, she said softly. You didn't have to step in. He nodded once, offering a small, reassuring smile. Nobody deserves to be treated like that. Before she could respond, the distant wail of sirens pierced the air. Heads turned. Forks dropped. Conversations died instantly. The stranger looked toward the windows, his expression unreadable, while his German shepherd sat up straight, ears perked. Two patrol cars skidded into the parking lot. Seconds later, 3 officers rushed into the diner, led by a stern-faced sergeant with narrow eyes and a hand already resting near his holster. Behind them, Derek followed triumphantly, pointing straight at the military man. That's him, Derek shouted. He assaulted me. He threatened me and this girl. Gasps erupted. Lily shook her head vigorously. No, he didn't. Derek's lying. But the sergeant raised a hand. Ma'am, step aside. We received a report of an aggressive suspect making threats. The stranger remained still, his posture calm but alert. Officer, he said in a steady voice, I didn't threaten anyone. I only stopped them from harassing her. Derek clung to his performance, limp wrist held dramatically against his chest. He grabbed me. Look at my arm. I want him arrested now. The sergeant studied Derek's exaggerated display, then turned toward the quiet man. Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back. Lily rushed forward. Please, he didn't do anything. The officers ignored her. The stranger didn't resist. He simply lowered his gaze, nodded once to his dog, and slowly extended his wrists. The click of the handcuffs echoed through the diner like a punch to the gut. Customers stared in disbelief as the man who had defended a waitress was treated like a criminal, while the real bully smirked from behind the badge of his influence. None of them knew the truth. They were cuffing a Navy SEAL. The cold metal tightened around the stranger's wrists, but he didn't resist. His steady breathing and calm expression contrasted sharply with the chaos unfolding around him. The German shepherd beside him let out a low, uneasy whine, stepping closer as if ready to defend him at any moment. Easy, boy, the man murmured, gently nudging the dog back with his knee. Even handcuffed, his voice carried control for him, composed, almost reassuring. Lily stood helplessly a few feet away, her voice cracking. Sergeant, you're making a mistake. Derek provoked everything, everyone here saw it. The sergeant didn't respond. He guided the stranger toward the door with a firm grip, scanning the room like he expected someone else to jump in. The other officers blocked Lily as she tried to follow. Derek leaned casually against the counter, arms crossed, enjoying every second. You should have minded your own business, Derek sneered under his breath as the stranger walked past. Now look where that got you. The stranger met his gaze briefly. No anger, no fear. Just a silent, chilling disappointment, as if Derek had revealed more about his character than he realized. Outside, the officers led the man toward the patrol car. Passers-by slowed, whispering as they watched a calm, disciplined man being treated like a dangerous criminal. The dog sat by the curb, muscles locked, eyes glued to his handler. Something about the canine's unwavering focus made even the officers uneasy. Lily burst through the diner doors, tears forming. Stop! Listen to me. He didn't assault anyone. Derek is lying. The sergeant exhaled deeply. Ma'am, if you interfere again, we'll have to detain you too. Step back. Her breath hitched. The injustice burned inside her, but she froze, watching helplessly as the man who saved her was pushed into the back of the patrol car. Derek strutted outside, hands in his pockets. Make sure he learns his lesson, officers, he said smugly. But the sergeant's expression flickered just for a moment. Something didn't add up, and while Derek celebrated his victory, none of them realized the consequences of cuffing a Navy SEAL were only beginning to unfold. As the patrol car door slammed shut, the German shepherd remained frozen on the sidewalk, ears pinned forward, body trembling with restrained intensity. The officers had expected the dog to relax once his handler was secured, but instead he rose slowly to his feet, every muscle rigid. Whose dog is this? One officer muttered, stepping back cautiously. The stranger inside the vehicle leaned toward the window. Rex, stay, he commanded calmly through the glass. Instantly the dog stopped moving. But his eyes, sharp, loyal, burning with confusion, never left the man. It was a level of obedience that stunned even the officers trained to work with canine units. The sergeant frowned. That's impressive control, he remarked quietly. Military dog? The stranger didn't answer. He simply held the dog's gaze, offering a small nod of reassurance. Rex responded by sitting down perfectly straight, tail tucked, alert and focused. Passers-by watched with fascination as the dog refused to relax, his instincts telling him something wasn't right. Lily stood nearby, wiping her tears. Look at him, she whispered to one of the officers. Does that look like the behavior of a dangerous man's dog? The officer hesitated. Honestly, no. Rex suddenly let out a low growl not directed at the officers, but at Derek, who strutted toward the cars with a victorious smirk. What's his problem? Derek scoffed, waving dismissively at the dog. Rex's growl deepened, ears flattening. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Dogs didn't just behave like this for no reason, especially well-trained ones. The sergeant scratched his chin. Something inside him shifted. Why is this dog reacting like that? He murmured. He's not acting like a pet. He's acting like a trained protector. Lily stepped closer, voice trembling. Because he knows the truth. You're arresting the wrong man. And for the first time, the sergeant's certainty began to crack. Inside the patrol car, the stranger sat quietly, his hands cuffed behind him, his posture still impossibly straight. Most people would slouch or panic, but not him. His breathing stayed controlled, steady, almost meditative. Even the sergeant noticed through the rearview mirror, "This guy isn't acting like a normal suspect," he muttered to the officer beside him. No yelling, no fighting, no excuses. Outside, Rex remained seated, unwavering, protecting the patrol car as if guarding something priceless. Derek eyed the dog nervously now, his earlier arrogance starting to fade. "Why's that mutt staring at me like that?" he asked, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a plea. Lily hugged herself tightly. She couldn't shake the feeling that nothing about this situation felt right. The stranger had stepped in calmly, handled Derek without hurting him, and now sat in cuffs like he'd trained his whole life to stay composed under pressure. One of the younger officers approached the sergeant hesitantly. "Sir, maybe we should double-check what happened." "That waitress says he didn't threaten anyone." The sergeant frowned. "Derek's family donates to half the town's programs. If he says something happened—" "But look at the suspect," the officer insisted softly. "He's too disciplined." Disciplined. That was the word. Even the way the man adjusted himself in the cramped back seat seemed measured and precise. Not fearful, not defiant, just trained. The sergeant stepped out and circled toward the back door, glancing at the stranger. "You served before?" he asked casually. The man met his eyes with a steady calmness. "I've served." The sergeant paused. "Army? Silence? Marine Corps?" Still nothing. The German shepherd whined softly, picking up on the rising tension. Derek approached, irritated by the sudden shift. "What's with all the questions?" "He attacked me. Just take him in already." But the sergeant didn't look at Derek. His eyes stayed locked on the stranger, who finally spoke in a low, even tone. "Sergeant, I didn't attack him. I de-escalated a threat. That's what I'm trained to do." A subtle chill ran through the sergeant's chest. Those weren't the words of an average citizen. They were the words of someone used to stepping into danger calmly, quietly, and with purpose. The tension in the parking lot thickened as more customers stepped outside, unable to stay silent any longer. They exchanged uneasy glances, gathering behind Lily as if collectively deciding that enough was enough. One elderly man cleared his throat loudly, drawing the sergeant's attention. "Officer," he said firmly, "I saw the whole thing. That young man didn't attack anyone. Derek was harassing the waitress, and that fella stopped him, calm as could be." A woman beside him nodded vigorously. "Yes, sir?" Derek threw a napkin at the girl and demanded she shine his shoes. The military guy didn't hurt him. He just stopped him from touching her. Derek's jaw tightened. "What are you all talking about?" He grabbed me. "You saw it?" "No," another voice cut in sharply. This time it was a truck driver who had been sitting by the window. "We saw you try to shove him first. He only held your wrist so you'd stop." The sergeant turned slowly toward Derek, his expression shifting. "Is that true?" Derek scoffed. "Are you seriously listening to them? These people don't know who my father is." "That's enough," the sergeant snapped, surprising everyone. It was the first time he'd raised his voice. Lily stepped forward, her hands clenched. "Officer, please, everyone is saying the same thing." He protected me. The younger officer who had doubted Derek earlier looked around the group, counting silently. At least 7 witnesses, all pointing to the same truth. The sergeant exhaled, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Why didn't any of you come forward earlier?" A middle-aged woman shrugged. "Because you arrested him before we had the chance." The words hit harder than expected. The officers exchanged uncomfortable looks. Even Rex, sitting loyally by the patrol car, seemed to sense the shift, his posture relaxing just a fraction. Derek felt the walls closing in. His confidence faltered as every witness contradicted him. His smirk faded, replaced by a flicker of panic. The sergeant's gaze hardened. "Derek, it's starting to look like you lied to us." For the first time, the bully realized the tide was turning, and fast. The sergeant's expression grew tighter. With every passing second, as witness after witness spoke against Derek, the once confident bully shifted uncomfortably. his expensive jacket no longer giving him the armor he thought it did. The officers exchanged glances, silent, telling glances that hinted their certainty was unraveling. The younger officer approached the sergeant quietly. "Sir, I think we acted too fast." The sergeant rubbed his jaw, glancing between Derek, the crowd, and the handcuffed man patiently sitting in the patrol car. "Yeah," he muttered, "I'm starting to think so too." Derek stepped forward, forcing a laugh. "Come on, you're not seriously believing these people over me? My wrist hurts, look." He shoved his arm toward the officers dramatically. The sergeant leaned in, examining the supposedly injured wrist. No swelling, no marks, no signs of force. "Just skin, untouched and perfectly fine?" "This doesn't look injured," the sergeant said flatly. Derek stammered, Well, the pain comes and goes." Asterisk, a nearby customer scoffed. "Oh, please. He barely touched you. You were more upset about being embarrassed than anything else." The officers couldn't hide their reactions, now raised brows, tightened lips, flickers of suspicion. Lily stepped beside the sergeant. "Sir, the man you arrested handled everything peacefully. He didn't yell, he didn't fight, he didn't threaten anyone. He only defended me when Derek tried to shove him." The sergeant turned toward her, and for the first time his hard exterior cracked with doubt. "And you're absolutely sure?" She nodded. 100%. At that moment, Rex, still sitting loyally by the patrol car, let out a sharp bark, making Derek jump. The sergeant's eyes shifted to the dog. Even his dog isn't acting like he belongs to a violent suspect. The younger officer added, "Sir, his behavior doesn't match our report." None of this adds up. Derek's face drained of color as he realized the officers were slipping away from his control. His voice rose in panic. "You can't just believe them. I told you what happened." But now the sergeant wasn't looking at Derek. He was staring at the handcuffed stranger, calm, quiet, unshaken, wondering who exactly they had just arrested. Something was very, very off. And the truth was getting closer. The sergeant exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the situation press into his shoulders. He opened the patrol car door and crouched beside the handcuffed stranger, studying his calm expression. Most people would be furious, shouting, demanding release. But this man looked almost patient, as if he'd been through much worse. "Sir," the sergeant began carefully, "I need to see your identification again. Something isn't adding up here." The stranger nodded once. "Front left pocket," he said quietly. "You can take it." The sergeant reached in, retrieving a worn leather wallet. It wasn't stuffed with credit cards or flashy photos, just a few essential items arranged with military precision. When he slid out the ID card, his breath caught. There, stamped boldly across the top, were the words United States Navy Special WRFAR, and below it, the unmistakable insignia. A trident. A pistol, an anchor. A flintlock, the SEAL emblem. The sergeant's eyes widened. "No way," he whispered. The younger officer leaned in. "What does it say?" He froze mid-sentence. "Sir, that's a Navy SEAL ID." A wave of whispers rippled through the crowd as the sergeant stood up slowly, stunned into silence. Derek's face contorted, his bravado evaporating like smoke. "A SEAL? No, that's fake. It's gotta be fake." But the sergeant knew better. There were levels of discipline, posture, situational awareness, and this man displayed all of them effortlessly. Everything about him suddenly made sense. Rex barked once, almost proudly, as if announcing the truth. The sergeant swallowed hard, turning back to the stranger. "Sir, why didn't you say anything?" The man shrugged slightly. "Didn't need to. I wasn't a threat. You had a job to do." The simplicity of his words hit harder than anything else. No ego, no anger. Just duty. The sergeant immediately unlocked the cuffs, stepping back with deep regret. "Sir, I'm so sorry. We had no idea." Rex jumped to his feet, tail wagging as his partner exited the car, finally free. Derek stood frozen, watching everything crumble. He hadn't just called the police on an innocent man. He had tried to humiliate a Navy SEAL. The moment the handcuffs clicked open, the entire parking lot fell into stunned silence. It felt as if the air itself had thickened, holding every breath suspended. Customers who had stepped outside turned pale with disbelief. Even passing drivers slowed. Sensing something extraordinary unfolding, the stranger rubbed his wrists calmly, not with anger, but with quiet patience. Rex pressed against his side immediately, sniffing him anxiously before leaning his head into the man's leg. An unmistakable gesture of relief. The sergeant stood at rigid attention, his voice low. "Sir, I apologize." We responded too quickly. The SEAL nodded once. "You followed protocol. It's fine." But his gentleness only made the sergeant feel worse. Inside the diner windows, faces pressed against the glass. Lily covered her mouth with both hands as tears pooled in her eyes. She had known the stranger was special but never imagined this. Word spread fast. "Is he really a SEAL?" "Oh my God. That explains everything." His calmness? The dog? Derek, however, looked like he'd been struck by lightning. His earlier arrogance drained completely, leaving only a pale, shaking shell of the bully he'd been minutes before. He can't be," Derek stuttered. "If I knew that, I wouldn't have." "That's the point," Lily said, stepping forward with newfound courage. "You shouldn't treat anyone the way you treated me. SEAL or not." Derek's mouth opened, but no words came out. The weight of humiliation pressed hard on his chest. He wasn't just wrong, he was exposed. The sergeant eyed Derek sharply now, all patience gone. The balance of power had shifted entirely, and as the SEAL stood tall beside Rex, the entire crowd understood something with chilling clarity. They hadn't just arrested an innocent man. They had disrespected a hero. Lily stepped forward cautiously, her hands still trembling from the emotional chaos of the last hour. But now, for the first time, she wasn't scared. She wasn't intimidated. She wasn't shrinking under Derek's voice. She had the truth and the courage to speak it. The sergeant noticed her approach and gave her a respectful nod. "Miss, we need to hear everything. Start from the beginning." Lily inhaled shakily. "I was serving Derek and his friends. They were being rude, calling me names, throwing napkins, laughing every time I tried to answer politely." She paused, her voice cracking. "But then he told me to kneel and shine his shoes." Gasps rippled through the crowd again. She continued. "I told him to stop. I said I was just doing my job. But he stood up and stepped toward me like he was going to grab me. That's when..." She turned to the SEAL, her eyes softening. "That's when he came over." Asterisk, the SEAL didn't move. He simply listened, quiet as always. "He didn't yell," Lily said. "He didn't shove Derek, he just stood between us and told him to back off." She swallowed. "And when Derek tried to push him, he didn't even hurt him. He just held his wrist to stop him. That's all." The sergeant nodded slowly. "That matches what everyone else said." Lily glanced at Derek, whose face had drained of all color. After that, Derek walked out and called the police. He said he'd make him regret it. He wanted the officers to arrest him just because he embarrassed him in front of his friends. The younger officer shook his head. "So, no assault. No threat. Just a man stopping harassment." "That's exactly what happened," Lily said firmly. "He protected me when no one else stepped in." Rex pressed closer to the SEAL's leg, as if confirming her words with silent loyalty. The sergeant exhaled, his patience for Derek fully evaporating. He turned stiffly toward the bully. "So you filed a false report," he said flatly. "And you dragged us into this for your ego." Derek flinched, his voice shrinking to a whisper. I didn't think..." "That's the problem," the sergeant snapped. "You didn't?" And now it was time for consequences. Derek's confidence shattered like thin glass. His shoulders hunched, his eyes darted anxiously between the officers and the gathering crowd. The smirk he'd worn all afternoon was long gone, replaced by a desperate tightness around his mouth. For the first time, he looked small-cornered by a truth he could no longer twist. The sergeant stepped closer, his voice cutting through the silence. "Derek Harlow, you knowingly filed a false police report, wasted emergency resources, and attempted to manipulate officers into arresting an innocent man." No. "Wait," Derek sputtered, lifting his hands defensively. "It wasn't like that. I mean, He grabbed me. He prevented you from assaulting a waitress, the sergeant corrected sharply. Every witness here confirms it. A murmur of agreement swept through the crowd. Lily crossed her arms, standing taller than anyone had ever seen her. The SEAL stood silently beside Rex, his presence alone enough to force Derek's gaze to fall to the pavement. The sergeant signaled to one of the officers, "Get his statement, and prepare to file charges." Derek's eyes widened with panic. "Charges? You can't charge me." "My father," the sergeant held up a hand. "Your father isn't here. And even if he were, the law doesn't bend because someone has money." But Derek wasn't ready to let go. He took a step forward, voice cracking. "Come on. This is just a misunderstanding. I didn't mean for it to go this far." The younger officer shook his head. "You meant for an innocent man to be arrested. That is going too far." The reality finally hit Derek, hard. His knees wobbled as he whispered, "I never would have done any of this if I knew he was The SEAL interrupted gently, his voice surprisingly soft. "You shouldn't treat anyone that way, no matter who they are." Those words stung more than any punishment. Derek lowered his eyes, ashamed. The sergeant turned to him one last time. "You'll have to come with us. And you'll explain your actions at the station." Derek swallowed the lump in his throat and nodded weakly. For once in his privileged life, he had no power. No excuses, only consequences. As Derek was escorted toward the patrol car, the tension in the parking lot slowly eased. Lily exhaled shakily, wiping the last of her tears. Customers stepped aside, giving the SEAL and his loyal dog a clear path. But the SEAL didn't look triumphant. He didn't even look relieved. He looked thoughtful, calm in a way that suggested he had seen far worse than a bully with a bruised ego. The sergeant approached him again, visibly humbled. "Sir, I can't express how sorry we are. You handled all of this with more patience than most people ever could." The SEAL shook his head. "You were doing your job. You responded to a call. That doesn't make you the bad guys." His voice carried no bitterness, only a quiet wisdom shaped by experience. Lily stepped closer, her eyes soft. "You didn't have to protect me. But you did? And you stayed calm even when things went wrong. Why?" The SEAL glanced at Rex before answering. "Because strength isn't about overpowering people. It's about protecting them, especially when they can't protect themselves." Those words settled over the crowd like a gentle wave. Several customers nodded, touched by the simplicity and truth of his message. He continued, "People lash out because they're afraid of looking weak. But real strength is staying steady, even when someone pushes you. Real strength is choosing restraint." The sergeant lowered his head, ashamed of how quickly he had believed Derek's lies. "You're a good man," he said quietly. "We should have seen that sooner." The SEAL offered a small, reassuring smile. "Next time you will." Rex nudged his leg, sensing the moment softening. The SEAL scratched the dog's head. "Come on, buddy. Time to head out." And with those simple words, he reminded everyone there that true power isn't loud, it's measured. Humble and rooted in integrity. As Derek sat in the back of the patrol car, his earlier arrogance nowhere to be found. The crowd slowly began drifting back toward the diner. But no one left without glancing one last time at the SEAL, the man who had stepped in quietly, protected someone without hesitation, and endured humiliation with unshakable grace. Lily approached him gently. I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice warm but trembling. "Most people would have yelled or fought back, but you stayed calm through everything." The SEAL smiled softly. "You don't owe me anything. I just did what anyone should do." Lily shook her head. "No, not anyone. Most people would have walked away." "You didn't." He didn't answer. Instead, Rex leaned toward her, nudging her hand. She laughed quietly through her remaining tears and knelt to pet him. "He's incredible," she whispered. "He's a good partner," the SEAL replied, pride shining through his calm voice. "He reads people better than any of us. He knew you weren't safe before I did." The sergeant stepped forward. "Sir, before you go, I want the record to reflect something." He paused, clearing his throat. Your restraint today saved us from making a bigger mistake. Thank you. The SEAL nodded. And just remember, justice starts with listening. Not assuming. The sergeant swallowed hard. We'll remember that. As the officers drove away with Derek, the rich bully slumped low in the back seat. The SEAL turned to leave. Lily followed him to the edge of the parking lot. Will you come back someday? She asked shyly. He paused, glancing back with a gentle smile. Maybe diner coffee wasn't bad. She laughed softly, genuinely this time. If you ever need a meal, it's on the house. Rex barked once, as if accepting the offer for both of them. The SEAL gave a final nod, then walked away with Rex at his side, calm, steady, a silhouette of quiet strength under the afternoon sun as he disappeared down the sidewalk. Lily whispered to herself, heroes really do walk among us. And sometimes they walk in quietly. And with that, the story that began with cruelty ended with courage, humility, and the reminder that true heroes never need to announce who they are.